Dear friends and colleagues, my name is Helen Connor. I'm with Helio International, which is an NGO think tank. We provide tools, analysis, instruments, indicators, methodologies to evaluate if energy policies are contributing to eco-development. You can find our documents on the website if you're interested. We are here after 2 days of very heavy work, and I'm pleased to see that we have kept everybody almost. So thank you for being here. We are entering what is possibly the most important session of this academy, if you have heard the questions in the last 2 sessions. Data may seem to be a boring topic for some people, but not for us in this room. Data is our bread and butter. I'd like to think that people in this room are a little bit like the little old ladies, in the famous advertising, suspiciously watching the hamburger and saying, "Where is the beef?" In our case, the beef is called data. And from the quality of this beef, of this data, lies the credibility of the whole renewable energy movement. Data are the food of all our work as economists and energy analysts. We all know the ultimate critic: garbage in, garbage out. Data, good data, best data are vital. The best possible data, because we all know that data are never absolutely perfect. So we are remaining humble, open-minded, and eternal researchers, like monks, looking for the best and all the little details. This session will help us share our experience with the best institution in the field, as you will see when I introduce the panelists. All of us need the best data to contribute to trustworthy assessment, good analysis, good strategy, efficient action, follow-up, monitoring. So we all need to also look beyond the data to see how it is used. We have to figure out also if the computer modeling where our data are being fed are also appropriate. Too often in the past, we have tried to do energy planning with models which didn't include energy efficiency data or renewable energy data that were reliable. And I talk of experience because I worked with the Markall model at a time where there was no energy efficiency, no renewable energy. And we had to work for many months to provide those data. Also, people who want to work towards 100% renewable energy have to count on finding data which are not available. We have to start from the bottom up. So we need statistics which are not in the regular data bank and can only be found in kitchens, in bathrooms, in farms, in African context, where women, in particular, carry the load of energy supply. And these people need us. They need the data because we have to take into account their predicament. We need to involve, therefore, all set of new actors that will be able to bring the proper data. We are anxious to hear how you in this room are gathering those interesting data, which are usually informal. Like beef, if we want to carry on the comparison, data are costly. And this is one more reason why this session is so meaningful and will hopefully reinforce the cooperation already existing between the institutions so that we can improve our common work and help REN21 to do a better job for all of us. Our panelists have a wide range of experience with this type of search for informal data, and it is my pleasure to introduce them now briefly, because you all have their CVs in the documents. They will each have 5 minutes to give you their views of the question. And after this introductory statement, they will be able to exchange together. After which, we'll have a question period. But first of all, we have our keynote speaker, which is, as you all know, Rana Adib. Rana Adib is research coordinator at REN21. She's in charge of REN21 flagship, the Renewable Global Status Report. And she will present the Renewable 21 experience in collecting informal data and doing the job. Please, Rana.
Thank you very much, Hélène, for the great introduction. I almost sat there and thought, like, I could stop my keynote, actually, because, there is, but it's very good. It's important messages, and we need to bring them to everybody here. Hello, everybody. I'm really happy to have you here, especially to meet lots of faces I know, basically per email, so that's great. And maybe some of the persons yesterday asked me, why are you doing a plenary session on data? Is it really so important? So some of the criticals amongst you might think like, oh, REN21, they didn't manage to come up with another topic. I really doubt it. Others might think they really want to promote themselves. Maybe, yes. Some of you might think they want to acknowledge basically this contributing community. And here I can really say, yes, we really want to do this because what we are doing would not exist without you. But the most important thing is basically that data and information is highly relevant to everybody here in the room. Anybody of you sitting here is using one kind of data or information for your work. Since we heard this morning that relevance is really something which is very important in getting the messages over, and we also heard that data is quite costly, so I hope that there are also some people who might invest into data who see that it's also relevant to them. Why is data important? We use it for learning and understanding, for analyzing, for presenting, for taking decisions, and for convincing decision makers. And once things are established on distributed renewable energy, we use them also for evaluating and monitoring. So data is basically the basis for all major decisions. And obviously, I mean, I'm the first one who believes very much in gut feelings on things. But when it really comes to invest money, when it comes to establishing long-term decisions, gut feeling is not enough. We need to have informed decisions, we need to have sound decision-making, and we need data and information as an important. There is no good data without no good decision without good data. And when it comes to renewable energy data and also the challenges which are existing here, we need this data to advance energy transition, to advance energy access, to attract investors and policymakers' interest, to inform policy and regulatory framework, and also to monitor our advancements. When we hear sustainable energy for all targets, regional targets being out there, investors' targets, country targets, these are partly binding, are partly not binding, but they really only make a sense if they materialize. And for evaluating if they materialize, we need to be able to measure this. Oh, sorry. I would like, with regard to this, to give you a very quick case study, just something which took place on the side of FAO. They have the wood fuel integrated supply and demand overview mapping. And what I like about this is also that it's Basically, it's on biomass. It's something which is quite challenging as a sector, but it's taking place in Serbia. So we are not talking about those developing countries where very often we say, yeah, in the developing countries, they don't have continuous data yet. So in Serbia, they did some assessment. They applied this tool to assess the level of substitution of heating oil by wood. And the Serbian government had done this before and came up with a total amount which was 4.9 times lower than the data which were assessed with this tool, which is based very much on household studies. And this just shows how important it is, depending on what you want to do, to see which type of information you need, which type of precision you need. And what Serbia had to do was to really review their policy and regulatory framework for biomass, actually, because there was not a sense at all to promote biomass use. Another aspect here is when we are doing modeling, when we are coming up with indicators and so on, we just also need to see that, yes, it is important to have those indicators. It is important to think about how attractive a country is, etc. But if we do not have the good primary data feeding into the models we have, feeding into those indicators, these indicators might not always mean a lot. So what does data mean? Are we talking about just data like data geeks, modelers, energy statisticians? No, we really think that data is something, it's a word or an expression which is broader. We have the data, we have information. It's not only quantitative information, but also qualitative information. It's market and industry data and information, economic investment data, information on political and regulatory framework, energy statistics, renewable energy potential data, household surveys, impact analysis, and so far and so on. When we are looking at renewable energy, there is very specific challenges, but there is also general challenges which exist when we talk about data and information in general. First, data production is costly. We need to invest into it. It's not going to just take place like this. There is an ownership of data, which also means that there might sometimes be some territorialism. Information is power. And information can be very political, and basically you can just use information to manipulate decisions, but the information can also be manipulated. So these are just dimensions which are around data and information in general. When we're looking at renewable energy, there are very specific challenges. First, very clearly, renewable energy data is cross-cutting and involving a lot of stakeholders. So it's not just calling, I don't know, but 2 or 3 utilities to ask them what their coal-fired power plants and conventional plants are doing. It is lots of different players. It's private industry, it's utilities, it's NGOs when you're talking about distributed renewable energy in developing countries, it's installers, so it's a lot of different players also. The other part is, so we have very decentralized and very dispersed data. And for some technologies, also small-scale data. When we're talking about solar thermal, on distributed renewable energy in developing countries, biomass, for instance, it's partly very small scale. And another part, and that's actually the good news, is the renewable energy market is evolving very quickly. But this means that there is a challenge too. Data needs to be very, very timely in the sector to really reflect the developments of the sector. So a challenge for all of us working on data is that the tracking is difficult. There are data gaps. They are linked to different aspects. One is certainly the availability of data. There is a matter of accessibility of data too. So basically, The energy players might know very well about the importance of data, but for instance, in the agricultural ministry, health, and so on, might have data which is important for the energy sector, but they are not even aware of the fact that it could be interesting to share that information. And there is certainly also the quality of data. What we clearly see, and that's not only because REN21 is doing this or we're a multi-stakeholder network, but we see from the different activities we have that in this field there is a need to include informal data. And I mean, Yasmina might say more about this, but IEA, for instance, in their medium-term report is also using industry data and not only the data provided by the member countries. What does informal data mean? Informal data is not just, it sounds a little negative, it's not really. It's data from private sector, from industry and consultants. It's research and academia data, NGOs, development organizations, and individual experts. Sorry. I have a quote here, because formal versus informal data is really something which is creating a lot of discussions, I'd say. And we're currently under discussion with UNECE, which is also covering Eastern Europe, so to say, for a regional status report. And one of their consultants, who is working since 15 years in the energy sector in Eastern Europe, wrote us some feedback and said UNECE should base its annual status report on official sources in order to make it credible, while NGOs cannot be regarded as such source. Unfortunately, this is partly still the thinking. And on the other hand, we heard yesterday, Farouk said it on the ECOWAS report, that there is a need to include informal data sources, but on the other hand, there is also a need, from their perspective, to have some formal validation. What does this mean? There is a tension between the stakeholder groups. And what is very important in this field is that we need to establish trust between those stakeholders. How can you do that? One thing is certainly to have a certain transparency of the data, necessity for referencing, the necessity to be very clear on the methodologies, and also to be clear on the limitations. There needs to be trust in the data providers, but also trust in the data aggregators. And this is really something which needs to be established over time. If you go to the country level, and today you just asked the Ministry of Energy, for instance, can you please take the data of the NGOs or the private sector? That's really important. You should do that. It won't work like this. First, they will say, yeah, but it's not official. And the NGOs and industry might just not want to share the data with the ministries too. So it's processes we're talking about which need to work over time. And we need to see actually the whole data activity as something which is evolving. So we need the trustful collaboration between formal and informal players which need to be established. And the other part is clearly also that in this context of the network and people, we need to have a validation process of the data. Very quickly, what are we doing at REN21? And I'm specifically taking the slides which you might already have seen. Oh, knowing that the animation is also still ongoing. So the way we see the Renewables Global Status Report is really that it's an international platform for data collection on renewable energy policy, market, and industry trends. It's an international platform, it's a collaborative platform, and we really invite all players, formal and informal, to participate in this. How do we do this? And that's basically to really show you that what type of information we have and how we are linking it together, but also how we are to also see that these are things which can take place at the country level. So we have technology contributors, very often the industry, renewable energy industry associations, partly the companies themselves. We have sector information, so from the heating and cooling, transport and power sector, and this is certainly something we want to strengthen and improve much more. And then we have the country information. All this is basically consolidated, cross-checked, pulled together, aggregated at the global level by an authoring team and a research support team. And then we are producing some drafts which are peer-reviewed. So for the moment, our data validation process at the global level is really this peer review. We are thinking on the other side to establish, and we're doing this for some sections specifically, to already establish some expert review from regional players, for instance, who can already validate the information. And what we're also doing, because the objective is obviously not to duplicate the work, is to collaborate with the other organizations out there who are doing data. So that's also a reason why we have IEA and IRENA here on the panel. So with the IEA, we're collaborating on the medium term report. We have the regional data networks collaborating with ICRI. Under SC4All, there is a global tracking framework. And with regard to the feedback which was existing before, I think in the session before, our objective clearly is not to duplicate here, but what we also see is that for the moment, they are using some data. They also identify the challenges which are out there on distributed renewable energy and energy access, and they basically try to collaborate with REN21 because we have this multi-stakeholder basis and we are using informal data, and everybody in that field is just aware of the fact that this informal data is very important. We're collaborating with the IRENA Global Atlas, UNEP, CTCN, and from the World Bank on the Status Energy Access Report. Those are just examples because there are others, but I think one thing which is interesting when we see where we are coming from and where we are going to. So a couple of years ago, REN21 was just known for their Renewables Global Stats Report. It was a flagship publication. There was a real added value. What we developed over time was to develop the Renewables interactive map data-wise, just because we were collecting a lot of information at the country level, and we really wanted to share this, because when you aggregate it at the global level, basically you don't make this information available. What we have seen now, and this is really linked very much to the fact that the markets are evolving very much, that we have regional approaches to renewable energy. We have more and more activities on regional reports. And what is interesting, I think, you have those errors. So basically, what we see is that this international platform and processes are basically stimulating discussions, networks, awareness about the importance of data at the regional level, partly at the national level too. And on the other side, we have the data which is produced in this, which can feed in again into the global report and the regional reports. What are the conclusions? We need reliable, timely, and regularly updated data. They are essential for establishing energy plans, defining targets, designing continuously adapting policy measures, and monitoring. To overcome data gaps, resources are needed. They are needed to establish continuous data collection. Just doing one report is fine, it is stimulating, but there needs to be some continuous follow-up. And what is much more important is that informal data needs to become acceptable data, also in the context of energy statistics, whether it goes through a validation process but there needs to be a dialogue about this. So there is a need for networks, there is a need for partnerships among stakeholder groups at the international, regional, and national level. And I just hope that the data output is only as good as the data input, and that we can manage to collaborate to improve the data situation to avoid this. The fact that one database is not good, the other one database is not good, and that some decision makers might just mix it up in a weird way so that the data doesn't need anything anymore. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Rana. So now we have a better view of what REN21 is really doing, what the challenges are and the data gaps, and what we can hope maybe to complement in this session. Hopefully we'll come out with a better way of dealing with these problems. Now we will invite the other contributed to this panel. First of all, we have Gonzalo Bravo. He has been a researcher at the Bariloche Foundation since 1998. He has a lot of experience in a tool which is called National Useful Energy Balances. So you will hear more about that. We'll know also what you do in Latin America with all the country. I will call also Stephanie Weekend, who is the IRENA representative, important role for us, and she's Associate Program Officer. Her activities include, in particular, the Knowledge Gateway and data dissemination and statistical analysis. Thank you for being here, Stephanie. Yasmina Abdelila is the IEA person. She's responsible for energy data management and renewable energy modeling for the medium-term renewable energy market report. She contributes to several IEA activities beyond that, like the Tracking Clean Energy report, and she will tell us more about that. She will also manage the collection, the joint collection of data, IEA and Eurostat. So this is a precious person on this panel. Finally, Karin Reis is a sustainable energy expert at ECOVAS, Center for Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency, ECRI. Everybody knows because we had your report last night. She's based in Cape Verde, so she has an experience which is very important for us. And she also is involved in C4All agenda activities. So welcome to the group here. Each of them will have a few minutes, 5-10 minutes, I think would be good, to tell us, first of all, about their role, personal role and expertise. Second, about the role of their specific institution, what is the responsibility in the data collection worldwide. And finally, how they go about collecting data. And then we'll have more questions that will arise from Hannah's presentation and will be dealt with by the panel first and then by the whole audience. As you may have noticed, this is a fairly technical panel, and we are very proud of having a majority of women, which is unusual. We are restoring the gender parity in this panel. And so, since we are very gallant, we are giving the first spot to Gonzalo. Go ahead.
Very kind of you, Helen. Good evening, everybody. It's a pleasure for me to be here. It's an honor. And well, I will let you know what Fundación Bariloche is doing or collaborating to the network. We've been here since the year 2007, but I think this table will be also as a workshop, as we will need some interaction. So I will be brief, I think less than 5 minutes. And I work in energy planning. I am dedicated to renewable energy as one option among energy sources. In the institution, we are committed to study and analyze the development of Latin America and the Caribbean region. So that's my broad field. I am an economist of a basic formation, so I rely a lot on team working and multidisciplinary interaction, which also has a lot to do with this data collection. At the beginning, in year 2007, it was easier to get or to pick what is going on in the region regarding renewables. But year after year, the task becomes more difficult, and it's very hard to comprehend, to reach, to identify everything that is going on. The chances of committing mistakes are higher. So there's an increasing need of relying in colleagues and in the information that is available. So I would say that this data gathering process has a bit of handcraft work. It's something that is being done every year and is improved every year. And we simply try to use every piece of information we find and then to check it, okay? In the newspapers, we have data there, we have news that we have to validate. So we try to move as a network within Latin America in order to identify if that is just a promotion issue, someone doing their own business, but that figure is not really happening, so we have to double-cross what is going on. I mean, we have the OLADE database, that's the Latin America Energy System, online information system, but that's statistics. When we go to policy, we found that some things have been discussed, but we have to assess if it's a pilot project or is something that is really enacted and is already ruling and is mandatory. And sometimes it's not very easy to assess in which precise year that regulation is working. This OLADE database is original by public sector. I mean, the public sector gives information. And the problem there is that sometimes we don't have the last year. That's the aim of the report. That's also a justification of the procedure. If we want published official data, we don't have the last year, not even the year before. So we have to move and to try to build the number. That's a challenge. We also use data from the wind or solar sector, energy chambers or associations. They produce good information. For example, in the database, we don't have yet a single specification for wind or for solar. It's all gathered together in other primary energy. So we try to go to this association of solar or association of wind. Some rural, or going to some examples, rural or energy-related estimations are linked, for example, to solar panels, and those are estimations, for example, developed in Peru by experts, with uncertainty of how many of those panels are really working. We can have the number of the original project, what's been installed, but not necessarily all of them are working. That's another difficulty. Another example for solar water heating for Argentina, for a single country, we relied on data coming from import database, because on one specific point of the time, some of these appliances come from imports. So we had that figure. That's very specific, but it's another source of information. If we have a simple code, a single code for that product importation, we can identify the figure or the number for the year. It might be interesting to gather these individual renewables appliances, I mean solar water heater or solar photovoltaics, that are individual applications, hard to get the number and the figure. If we can gather together the groups of users, the final users, if we could have them as a joint homogeneous group, we might have an estimation of how much capacity is available. Problems appear many times as incorporating or installing these renewables appliances is out of the building standards. So that's another challenge in the region. With the exception of Uruguay and Chile, this appliances, the renewable energy incorporation is not in the standards. So it is hard to get to identify which houses are having them. And finally, what we are trying to do in the region is to develop, to extend to a network of energy professionals in Latin America and the Caribbean in order to produce last year data or to verify the information we get. It is not an easy task. Academia, public savants, consulting staff is usually very busy, and it is hard to get their commitment. Moreover, day-to-day hard work, day-to-day work usually relies on all the pieces of information, all the data, than what is needed for this report. Well, that would be my first round. I will go for a bit of water now.
Thank you very much, Gonzalo. I think we have a pretty good idea of how analysts and collectors of data have to go into the nitty-gritty and really be very persistent in finding the proper data. Now we'll turn to Stephanie Weekend, who is with IRENA and may have a view which is less at the bottom part of the collection. I don't know. Let's.
Okay, thank you very much. First, let me start by congratulating REN21 for also organizing this panel on data. It's great to see so many institutions that are involved in renewable energy data collection assembled. And I specifically look forward to the questions and answers round. Before I speak a little bit more about data collection processes at IRENA and what our objectives are, can I just ask the audience who has already done data collection in renewable energy? Okay, so yesterday we were in the Bundestag, so I would assume that's quite a good majority or a good solid basis, so that will make the discussion even more fruitful, so that's exciting. So I'll give you a little bit an overview on first what we do at IRENA when it comes to data collection, as I mentioned before, then the challenges that we face in our daily work, and then in the last part also a little bit on what we are doing to face these challenges and which kind of avenues we're pursuing to account for renewable energies better. So when it comes to data collection itself, and Rana mentioned it very well in her introduction, we have different data that is important for renewables. So we have potentials that we cover at IRENA through the Global Atlas. We have the classical field of energy statistics, which we cover through our statistics department. But we also have socioeconomic data, which is the employment created through renewable energies, and also different policies in place, which we cover actually with the IEA together through the policies and measures database. We also have work on financial investment flows that we're doing currently. So you see, there's a lot of different dimensions when it comes to data, and this is also where renewables gets really interesting, because you don't have a simple dimension when it comes to data, you have a lot of dimension. And when you look at decentralized renewable energy systems, you suddenly also have a human dimension. So we were talking about energy access before, and that's definitely also a data set that we are looking at IRENA. So let me briefly give you an example on energy statistics, because my feeling was before coming here that we're also going to focus on energy statistics a little bit. We at IRENA launched our second data cycle this year through an IRENA questionnaire where we focus mostly on gathering capacity data for renewable energy. So a little bit different to what Rana mentioned, and I will start a little challenge here. IRENA is an intergovernmental organization, so we rely mostly on official data that comes directly from our member states through that questionnaire. But as Gonzalo mentioned, and he's absolutely correct, we have a 1 to 2 year gap where official data is not there. So we have to try and find ways to fill these gaps of 1 to 2 years, and this is where we get creative. And this is also where REN21 comes in and does a lot of great work, and all the other associations where we use also, for instance, GWAC data, data from the World Wind Energy Association, EPIA, SDIF. That's just to mention a couple of other secondary data providers. I mentioned the IRENA questionnaire. Two main points that we try to focus on in our daily work is the main challenges we see in that area. On the one hand, accounting better for the different categories in bioenergy. So in our questionnaire, we break bioenergy down in 20 subcategories. That's quite extensive. And also off-grid application, decentralized energy systems, as mentioned before. So in the work that we did, we found out that these are the two major gaps still when it comes mainly to renewable energy statistics, and we decided that these were the ones that we would try to focus on. So what are the challenges that we face when we do our little data detective work? And as you all have experience in data collection, you know how hard it is to find the right, trustworthy, validated number for one figure in one country for one technology. So when you look at the world, you see that countries are at different stages when it comes to renewable energy implementation and frameworks. You see countries that do not have any policy framework yet in place, which means they're mostly interested in potential data, so resource assessment data. What is the potential for wind? What is the wind speed? What is the solar radiation, etc. You have countries that already have a policy framework in place. Here, the country might be interested in energy statistics, so setting up a right accounting mechanisms, the right reporting structures, etc. When countries, let's say, have a policy framework in place for a number of years or even for a couple of months, suddenly it comes to be of interest that you need socioeconomic data. So what is the employment creation? So policymakers know and can also defend their policies within the population. So you'll see that different countries have different data needs at different points in time. We are well aware of that within IRENA, and we're trying to cater to all these different countries at the different level of renewable energy deployment. So that's the first challenge. The second challenge is a challenge that is more on the methodology side. We have a lot of different definitions when it comes to bioenergy, modern, traditional, different reporting structures. Different countries account for renewable energy statistics very differently. So if you would like to compare that on an international level, then you have to make sure that you compare apples to apples. So this is work that we're currently also undertaking and trying to find solutions with different partners so we come up with a common methodology framework. The third part, and that's really a challenge more on the national level of different countries, and this is what we experienced a lot when we were sending out the questionnaires and also trying to get trusted data from formal sources and on the country level itself, is that often there is no capacity to report. So that's something, the capacity building effort is something that we really need to look at, and that's country specific. This is going to be one of the great challenges also in the next years to come, to make sure that we create better renewable energy statistics reporting structures, mechanisms in especially developing countries. So the last point, how do we try to overcome these challenges at IRENA? So the first point would be data dissemination. So we are trying to open our databases and see also where we still have gaps when it comes to formal but also informal data, because covering 190 plus countries in the world for renewable energies is quite a challenge, especially, as I mentioned before, when it comes to off-grid or bioenergy systems. The second, the methodology challenge. We are developing currently a renewable energy statistics manual, which will be based on case studies from different countries on which frameworks worked, which ones are in place, where we are also inviting different partners such as the IEA, such as REN21, and the different regional organizations to collaborate. Lastly, and I'm very happy that we also have ICRI amongst us today, is also the partnership on a regional level. As you know, an international organization, we can't cover all the countries, so we rely on regional partners to coordinate different efforts. We will hope that we will continue this collaborative effort also in the future, not only for Africa, but also for Asia, for Latin America, and other countries. So I leave it at that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for this presentation, Stephanie. I think you have outlined pretty well the need for cooperation and what has already been achieved. And it's very normal that now the IEA has the floor as being sort of the older guy on the block, in a sense. So please, Yasmina, go ahead and tell us what you are doing.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to say thank you to REN21 for inviting us to speak here. I think it's very important that we have a panel on this particular topic as we're all struggling with harmonizing data collection. So first, I'll just give my name is Yasmina Abdalia, and I've been working at the IEA for 6 years. The first 4 years was in the Energy Statistics Division, collecting official energy statistics. And in the last 2 years, I've moved to the Renewable Energy Division under Paulo Frankel, collecting supplementary data for the medium-term renewable energy market report. So I'll just be speaking from those two perspectives of somebody who's worked in one division with official statistics and then another division in using supplementary information. And I'm just going to outline briefly the types of data that is collected and used inside the IEA, so we have a clear picture of the different data streams. So you can look at it basically as two types of data. There's IEA official statistics, energy statistics, as was mentioned earlier, and then there is supplementary information that people collect for their specific analysis. Inside the official IEA energy statistics, the data is collected differently depending on the geographic region, and that is split into the OECD countries and the non-OECD countries. For the OECD countries, data is collected from the national administrations. It's using a joint questionnaire, and when I say joint, I mean it's the same questionnaire that's used with Eurostat, which is the statistical commission, the statistical branch of the European Commission, as well as UNECE. So it's the same exact questionnaire that's used, and it's sent to national administrations. Those national administrations send that data back to the IEA, as well as back to Eurostat, and then there's a query process that goes back and forth to check the information. Now, the data that's collected from those questionnaires is on the supply and demand for over 60 energy flows and over 35 energy products. And as mentioned previously, that information goes up to N-2, the calendar year N-2, so up to 2012. So there is a gap between that and the current year. Now, for OECD countries, they are obliged to report this information. It's an obligation for the national administration to report this information. Now, for the non-OECD countries, that's not the case. So there is no questionnaire, for example, and the countries are not obliged to report this information to the IEA. So to get this information, the same type for the OECD countries, for the non-OECD countries, there's a variety of methods that are used. One of the most important methods is the collaboration with other international organizations. So we work closely together with OLADI, APEC, FAO, OPEC, for those who already have data collection processes in place to get information. The second method is basically desk research with using country contacts. So if we have a specific contact in a country, in a national administration, we can get that information back and forth. And then the third way is basically going to a country's website and getting their national energy balance and trying to harmonize that data with the format with the OECD countries. And so collecting the non-OECD data, as we've heard previously, is quite a challenge here. And so the IEA Statistics Division has a number of methods that they're using to improve the expertise in energy statistics. And I just brought with me briefly, one is the Energy Statistics Manual, which they're in the process of updating. This was done jointly with Eurostat to kind of be a primer on energy statistics in general, such as definitions, how to collect and report specific energy flows. And then recently they came out with the Energy Efficiency Indicators Manual, so going beyond the sector. We always talk about the industry sector or the paper, pulp, and printing sector, residential, but going beyond that for energy efficiency, it's important as well. And in addition, there is capacity building twice a year. So the Statistics Division will invite member countries and non-member countries to train in energy statistics, as well as going to those countries to perform regional statistics training as well. So that information is for 139 countries, and it stops at the year, this year would be 2012. Now, for the most up-to-date information, we also supplement that data with unofficial data to get the most recent market trends. And so in the Renewable Energy Division, what we do is collect information from subscription databases or market reports. We use our industry contacts. We also use the IEA implementing agreements, which are technology platforms where academia and industry experts can come together and share information. And so that is primarily our major form of data collection for electrical capacity for non-OECD countries. And that's one of the most important data points that we use in our market report to characterize the current status of the renewable energy market. This year we dived into system costs for renewable energy, which I kind of heard spoken about earlier this morning. We only chose a few key markets. Ones that we saw were the 10 fastest in specific technologies to try to see what type of data was out there for system costs. And I would like to reaffirm some of the challenges that I heard earlier today about collecting cost information. And then thirdly, in the unofficial or supplementary data that we use is the policy measures database that Stephanie had mentioned, which is a joint database with IRENA, where there's qualitative information as well as quantitative information on renewable energy policies. In some cases, there are feed-in tariff levels or specific targets, and in the rare cases, budgets allocated for renewable energy schemes. So I will end there briefly, talking about all the data that we use, and I really look forward to discussing some of those challenges further.
Thank you very much for having given us this overview of what you are doing. I'm sure that people will have questions later about all this. So now we give the floor to Karin Reis, who has a lot of activities come from Cape Verde, and we are very happy to have you today. Karin, please.
Thank you very much for...
Yes, it's okay. Okay.
Thank you very much for having this opportunity, being on this panel. Thank you very much, REN21, for having our first joint report launched yesterday. We're very proud of it. Of course, it's a flagship publication for ECRI. Before I start, just a few words to ECRI. I'm not sure if everybody is familiar with it. We are a regional organization of the Economic Community of West African States, focused on renewable energy and energy efficiency. We are based in Praia, Cabo Verde. It's a few little islands very close to Senegal. And we work in all the 15 ECOWAS countries. So we are a regional organization, I think, working very complementary to my previous speakers, and we have a lot of collaborations going on with all of you here on the panel. A lot has been said already, so let me go straight into what I would like to point out here is how do we from ECRI link our data collection, and I'm sure I don't need to point out how important it is for us as well. How do we link it to our policy programs and to the other programs that we have in ECRI? We have 4 result areas, which is policy, capacity building, knowledge management, and investment and business promotion. And all of these 4 result areas are very, very strongly, they rely on good quality data. So at a very early stage already, as a regional organization, we have launched a knowledge management platform, a web-based platform, which is called EcoRex. Sounds a bit like a dinosaur, but is quite an innovative tool. So I strongly invite you to visit our website. And this is where we publish all data available and collected in all of the 15 member states of ECOWAS. And we do this in collaboration with our so-called national focal institutions. These are, most countries, the ministries of energies or the energy commissions in the countries. And for us, this is a very, very important tool to engage strongly with the member states, to get data published which are validated by the member states. I will come to the informal data a bit later, but I think this is a very, very important point we have to make here, that we are an organization of the member states, so it's very important for us that all the data we publish is really validated. So this platform and all the data that we provide on the website is offered for free. And we have a process to get this data through our NFIs, but also until now, we had a process where also we in ECRI, we did a lot of research to get this data and then provide this data for validation to the countries. Now, this year, we have started a different approach because we believe the strongest needs that we face in the countries is to support the national institutions in the data collection. In the data collection, in the engagement with other organizations. It cannot be the Ministry of Energy alone. A lot of data is available in most of the countries. It is maybe not centralized, it is not collected at a central body. So what we now do, sitting in Praia, is saying we can't do this from the island, so let's support the countries with additional staff in human capacity for the ministries. I mean, I think Farouk from Nigeria will support me in this statement. Ministries are highly understaffed, and data collection and management is a lot of effort and requires a work-intensive task. So what we did is, this year, we engaged in all of the 15 countries, people on the ground, to support a standardized data collection process throughout the whole region. So ECRI, as a regional body, we developed together with experts from the region, but also with a whole team of international experts. We call them backstopper, but they all have a very strong expertise in this area. We developed a very comprehensive questionnaire that was validated before all the 15 countries started to go into this process. And this process is part of a general policy process. That means that ECOWAS has, in 2012, has adopted two strong policies on renewable energy and on energy efficiency. And these policies require national renewable energy and energy efficiency action plans based on the European model, as we have them here as well. So before starting to do an action plan, or as part of this process, we need a baseline. Where do we start, and how do we measure that our actions also have an impact? So we integrated this whole data collection process now into our policy and action plan process, which is still ongoing in all of the 15 member states. And we are right now in the process that all of these baseline data are validated in the countries. And this is the second step that we have changed. Before, we were collecting data And then we organized a regional meeting with our focal institutions, and we did a validation of this data. Now we do the validation in the countries. In each country, there is a validation workshop among all the stakeholders that are relevant for this data. So now, I mean, this is the first year that we are doing, but that we are trying this process. And I'm sure there will be a lot of lessons learned and space for improvement in the years to come. But this is the approach that we are trying now, to go really more into the countries, engage the stakeholders, and get the so-called informal data into the general discussion and into the validation process. And then, based on the baseline reports, which we publish very soon, then also the national action plans will develop, and the monitoring and verification, of course, is also a very important step. So having said that, this is also part of our overall activity of the Sustainable Energy for All. ECRI is the regional focal institution for coordinating the Sustainable Energy for All initiative in the ECOWAS region, in the ECOWAS countries. So we integrated this whole process and linked it to the Sustainable Energy for All process, so that we do not duplicate, we don't do another action plan or Sustainable Energy for All collection or action plan process. This is all one process where it is integrated. We try it as a region. We are the first region in the world that has started this process. We have some countries with a very strong leadership, such as Ghana, such as Nigeria, such as Cabo Verde. And we hope by the end of the year we have very good results to show. And we are still optimistic. I'm going to stop here for now.
Thank you very much for your enthusiasm, Karin. And I'm glad you insisted on the validation process, because this is over important. And I don't know if any of the panelists have anything to say about the validation process or other things. If you don't, we'll have to go to the audience, because we only have 20 minutes left, as Rana told me. So are there any questions after the presentation of Rana, first of all, and of our panelists that you would like to present to the panel and to specific people on the panel? It can be on formal data or informal data, telling us maybe how you go about collecting your own informal data, because you are mostly data collectors in this room. So please share your experience, give your suggestion, tell us how we can improve the standardization of those collection of data. So please, there was somebody there. Okay, go ahead, Monica.
But before I let you ask your question, my colleagues are passing out an evaluation form. It'll just take 5 minutes to fill, so at the end of the session, if you can fill it and hand it back to us and give us your feedback on what you've thought of the Academy so far.
Okay, go ahead.
Yes, okay, thank you very much. I just wanted to underscore the importance of informal data gathering.
Can you give us your name again? We know you, but please.
Okay, sorry. My name is Farouk Yusuf from the Federal Ministry of Power in Nigeria. I just want to underscore the importance of informal data gathering in the process of getting data for renewables, especially in some of our countries, particularly in the West African region, where you find many a times the information you are looking for is not housed in a particular institution. You find a number of times you have the federal government, the state government, the local government, the community, the individuals. Everybody is doing one or two things around. And mostly you find government doesn't have budgets for gathering this kind of data. So what we've done through the support of ECRI is to create a validation process where data comes in from anywhere, but then you get to sit down together and then ensure that this data is fine. Sometimes it's very important for you to provoke discussion by way of sending a questionnaire with some information about a particular person. He will jump out and say, no, this is not our data. Then give us your own. So you get a process of getting to validate this data through this kind of interactions. So just like Karen said, it is very important to continue to engage with all the stakeholders in terms of getting this information that will later be validated for government institutions before passing up to the third party. So I think that I will stop here. Thank you very much.
Okay. We'll take 2 or 3 other questions before answering. Okay.
Sorry, mustn't touch the microphone, sorry.
Your name?
Good afternoon, my name is Bill Gillett, and I used to work with the Commission, and I want to refer to some work which we supported, which I didn't hear during your discussions, and that is the little book that is outside in the reception from Eurobserver. The Eurobserver data is for all the European Union, and I'm very interested to hear a little bit what interaction you might be having with that, because we have done 2 things with this. First of all, believe it or not believe it, we do believe the Eurostat data. And what we have done with the Eurobserver is to insist that there is always a backward correlation to see with the experience of the updated Eurostat, what is the Eurobserver actually saying. And we found that we were within less than 5% of error, but it was possible to get the data more quickly through Eurobserver than through Eurostat. That's why we supported it, to try to gain 1 year to help to feed into the policy-making process. So my question is, what do the panelists think, and is that useful to you? And my second point, I think, is I understand there is an evolution in the methodology of collecting, especially renewable energy data, which we have been learning from IEA and Eurostat. That development of the methodology, are we sharing that with the other countries? Because it wasn't clear to me that this very dedicated effort of regular meetings and looking at the methodology, is that being shared?
Thank you for this pointed question. Another at the front row here.
But I have to go.
Okay. Sure.
Oh, sorry, can't touch it. Production data, that seems to be the new holy grail. It's very hard to come by, other than 2 or 3 or 4 years down the road. It seems to change. Do you see us shifting into more, not in terms of installed capacity, but in terms of actual production and any possibility? I mean, the only way I can get any sort of authoritative figures for wind production for the previous year, before Eurostat and all the other processes ponder, is to pinch them out of the your midterm market report, which I know are very well-educated guesstimates. But are there any other ways that you can see of bringing that information forward?
Thank you. We'll take all the questions and then we'll have the answers.
Okay.
And,
I'll stand in the middle so I'm not behind a pole. Okay. Hello, panel. I'm Heather Rosemarin, Executive Director of the Inter-American Clean Energy Institute. And first, I just want to say a giant thank you to you and to all your organizations for compiling all of this data and presenting it in such a user-friendly way. It's incredibly important for all the work that's going on. And so thank you. One quick example, and then I'll go to question. I was contacted by a coalition of NGOs in Brazil that were putting together a video to support their Energy for Life campaign, which is a new campaign to generate public awareness about wind and solar alternatives. And they wanted data on how much wind capacity there was in the world, and solar, and what the growth curves were, and what the penetration levels were in different countries. And I can happily say that in like less than an hour, I was able to pull all of that together from your reports and send it off and get that was incorporated into the video. So thank you. Question is, if you're a policymaker or an NGO or an advocate or just a citizen and you want this data, first you have to know who all of you are. Okay, so I know who all of you are. So I can go to REN21's website and IRENA's website and the IEA's website and the ALAJA website and the Bloomberg website and the Clean Energy Pipeline website, and I can do all of that, and I've got 10 bookmarked that I go to all the time. But, and I'm sure you do too, but what does the busy policymaker, the busy NGO advocate do when they don't even know what this whole suite of organizations is? So we've tried to address this gap by putting a resource portal on our website, cleanenergyamericas.org, where we pull all these reports together, properly linked back to your organizations. Is there anything going on your end where you're not just putting up your own publications, but linking all of the relevant publications? Thank you.
Thank you. Here.
Okay, thank you. Wim Jonker-Klune. I'm having a large database on small-scale hydro developments in Africa. And I'm facing a problem on getting the informal information on particular new developments, particularly from the private sector. If you approach private sector and ask them, do you have information on your new developments, which I'd like to put on my web-based database? In most cases, they don't like to share that information. I found out that the best way of getting that information is seeing what you can find in in documents for the CDM registration, things like that. And then tell them, listen, this is what I found. Is that correct? And in most cases, it's not. But then they will give you the correct data if you just promise them to publish the correct ones. How do you deal with that to verify particular data that private sector is giving or not giving at all?
Very, very important question. Any more questions? Here, Sena.
Sorry.
Thank you very much. We do appreciate. Question is, how can all this data be useful for end users, people in the villages? Can they ever make use of this data, or how can we all do that?
Okay. Now we'll go to the. Oh, sorry. Excuse me, sir. Last question.
You can't have it.
Huh?
Hold it. You're just talking to it.
Okay. Can we? No, you can take it. Sorry. My name is Ernesto Macías from Alliance for Ratification. I have been involved in research for many years, trying to get information directly and indirectly. Sometimes going to some companies who promise me, give me some data, paying a lot of money and so on and so that. So the thing, this is very challenging. This is very, very complicated. I'm talking about rural electrification. I'm not talking about other kind of sources that Eurostat, Eurostat. I mean, all the developed countries, we have that information. My point is, there are a lot of institutions. I have been collaborating with REN21, and I think the work is great. But then we need to really contact and to be involved and try to exchange communication or information with other entities. And there are many entities, a lot. They are all around the world. And what I see, first of all, is lack of exchange, real formal exchange of communication. And my question is, basically, we need that information. And the information must come from the ground. On the ground, there are many players, but country by country, perhaps, all these institutions together could create a kind of platform financing this. Because the sources, sometimes, are not incentivized at all to provide any information. So why not to really create a kind of big plan where we can really establish a budget to really have this information coming from the ground? Country by country or region by region, because obviously if we try to get the information regarding the solar lanterns that are distributed in, I mean, it's almost impossible, what you said about import and export, but that's my question. Why don't we really improve communication among all the institutions in this world? There are many, dozens, and why don't we really establish a plan with a budget to really obtain this information formally and to really create a clear platform for the future that we say, okay, this is the reality today, we will see year after year how we can improve it.
Thank you very much. It's a recurring question. Actually, many of us have it. I'll give Hannah the chance to answer first, and then you can pass it on to the other panelists.
Okay.
I'll take the last question, and I'm pretty sure that Arena and IEA will also have some comments on this. Basically, there is some communication, there is collaboration. We are talking since a couple of years about making databases linked open data so that they can interlink, because everybody has different, I'd say, strength in the data collection process. I certainly agree that there are two aspects. Three. One is certainly also institutions have a certain ownership. I leave it like this. There is very much the will of doing things and linking it together, but it's also a fact that depending on what you want to link together, we need to establish very clear parameters and define what we mean by renewable energy data. And ARE, for instance, might look very much, or GOGLA is looking into very different parameters than IEA or ARENA might be doing on energy statistics, or Eurostat. I have seen the questionnaire of ICRI, and very honestly, it's quite scary when you see what amount of information they want to raise. So there is also a need to basically define much better what we really mean and what we could share. And the other part with regard to resources, to be very honest, REN21 is probably not the best player here. We're very open to collaborate on this because the idea is clearly to make it available. What we see from our work, if there is a need for capacity building, there is clearly a need also for establishing the ownership in the countries, because this is something which is very important. It is the only way of having a sustainable and continuous data collection. So I cannot do more than agreeing with you on the point that we need to put together resources here. I just think it's not as easy to get there and establishing this linked open data and interconnection. I would like to, there were quite a lot of questions. I would like to pick up just the validation process, because what we see is validation process is really something which is important. But we also need to keep in mind, and I'm just taking, I know from the discussions in the IPCC's REN report, there were fights over hours and days and weeks to, for instance, remove the terminology and everything which was referring to fossil fuel subsidies. I just take this as an example because I think that in the validation process, we also need to see that the validation process by formal and institutional providers and players is not adding a complexity and adding some time lags and making the informal data they are collecting not interesting anymore, not timely anymore, and basically pushing it into some structured processes which make it very political and where we might just lose on the real added value. And I think at the operational level, on the collaboration with the international organization, the region, and also the other players, REN21 is very happy and to ally with everybody and collaborate.
Who wants to answer some of the other questions? Yasmina, you want?
I'll go first. Is that okay? Okay. So we have 3 minutes left, so I'll take one and leave the other 2 minutes to the others. Your observer, we use the data in our database. We definitely see a value with having more quick and rapid information than what Eurostat and IEA provides. So hopefully that answers your question. There was another question regarding creating one platform that assembles the knowledge and the data from all the institutions. IRENA is currently developing a project that is called Resource, so Renewable Energy Source. We'll launch it in January. The idea is that we will provide data and data sets that will also come from external partners. So we have a stable database that we can share also with the public. Then Steve, I think, had a question regarding production. Yes, that's something we're working on. unfortunately, a lot of countries still have, not issues, but still have difficulties reporting even capacity data. So I think the way ahead will be to continue with capacity, and with the countries that are a little bit more advanced, switch to production. So we'll see how that goes, but that's definitely something we are interested and working on. The IEA, I'm sure, will also say something about that. There was also a question regarding end user and the importance of data for end users. So perhaps that's less relevant for energy statistics, but if you come to potential, so what is the potential of solar radiation or wind speed on my farm or on my roof, then data definitely becomes interesting, even for an end user in a small village, let's say in Africa. Did I forget anyone? Oh, and the collaboration, yes. So that's something that I think Rana answered already quite well. So we are working on this quite heavily. So I can already mention that for Africa, we are going to start an IEA IRENA-UNECA partnership, launching it in December in Tunis. So you see we already have regional efforts to strengthen our collaboration, and we hope that this will also continue.
Thank you. For the question from Nigeria about how to motivate the right audience for the response rate, I would say even regarding official statistics, that can be a challenge as well. So even when you're facing it at a local and regional level, it can still even be an issue at a national level. So I can only sympathize with that challenge. But I was just at a conference actually or a workshop that was supported by AFREC, which is the Energy Commission for the African Union, and IRENA was there, as was FAO and the member delegates. And the thing that I kept hearing more and more regards to data collection, especially in African countries, was that it wasn't getting the level necessary at the high level attention. So it wasn't getting the attention necessary at a high enough level to say, hey, data is important and you are obliged to respond. So that was a common theme that I heard there. Regarding the Euro Observer, yes, we do use that publication and we find the data valuable there. And regarding the methodology that the European Commission is looking into, yes, you are correct in that because the European directive or the EU directive is actually making quantitative information part of a binding target. They're actually embarking on a lot of, in my personal opinion, innovative ways for energy statistics and data gathering and how to really account for renewable energy in ways that traditionally we haven't. So I do agree with you that sharing that information and learning about what the European Commission does is very important. And I know that the Energy Statistics Division at the IEA is in bilateral discussions with them, but it is true that there's some very valuable information coming out of there. Steve Sawyer's question is on electricity generation, more timely electricity generation. I agree with you. There is monthly electricity generation data available, but having the resource for some countries, but having the resources available to collect that in country and then as well as at an organization level is just an added challenge, just having someone sit there and collate all of that information. But some countries do monitor it on a monthly data and make that available, and we would like to integrate that into our analysis when we get more resources. The other question was on confidentiality. Yes, I think I can even say that we struggle with that even in the Energy Statistics Division. I've seen them struggle with that even on official energy statistics for oil and gas, for example. And so even there, we do run into confidentiality issues. And even when you're looking at costs for renewable energy technologies, there's also a lot of confidentiality issues there. And I'm keen to hear your tactics of dealing with it because as far as I'm concerned, I haven't really found a solid tactic yet, so I can empathize with that. And then, again, as Stephanie mentioned, for the regional collaboration, as I said, I was just at a workshop that AFREC and the African Union hosted, where we had different international organizations there brainstorming at how can we improve data collection and how can we improve the dissemination of that to reach the right audience. So there is work being done amongst our organizations, but I do agree that more could be done. So,
thank you. Did you want, please, Karine?
Okay, I would quickly like to respond to what Bill has mentioned on how do we make use of what the EU has been done and the lessons learned. In ECRI, our biggest data collection project is an EU-funded project, which has just been launched. For the next 3 years, this will be our key project to improve our data collection and analysis, and all of the lessons learned from the EU and of course also from other organizations, but we are particularly looking into the EU lessons learned will be taking into consideration. There was another question on how can we bring to, or is there a website or any tool where we collect all the different reports? Again, an invitation to visit the EcoRex website, our observatory. This is exactly what it is meant to be, to collect all the existing information, all the existing reports on the national level, on the international level, and from all the different organizations. Again, it is free of charge and access, so I invite you to visit our website. A lack of exchange between the players was the last question. I would like to link this also to the relevance of a regional organization in this whole process. I think the coordination, not only between us organizations, but really between countries who are about to establish sound data collection processes, is very important. And on the regional level, we can really benefit from learning from each other. In the ECOWAS region, we are so diverse in the countries. There is a big difference between Cabo Verde, Sierra Leone, and Burkina Faso, but the countries they still feel that they benefit from each other to have this regional approach. So I think having a regional organization being strongly involved in data collection and analysis has a very important aspect. And here comes my two final statements. It's the analysis, I think, where we need to focus on in the future, not only the collection, but what are we going to do with the data that we collect, and how do we analyze and develop tools that are useful for policymakers, for other stakeholders. This is our focus in the future. A lesson learned from our data collection process, and strongly discussed, the hottest topic of discussion was, what are we going to do with sectors, with areas where we don't have data? And we have a lot of those countries where there is a big lack of data in one or the other sector. And I think the conclusion was, and that's my final word, I promise, is we should not take the lack of data or information as an excuse for non-action. I think this is our guideline for ECRI in the future. Thanks.
Very wise. Gonzalo.
A very brief word. Yeah, I seem to get a demand for this, for linking all this separate efforts. I think we need a budget and a sponsor in order to do this sort of cross-cutting issue that might avoid duplication of data gathering. When you go to the institution, they say, I already gave that information. Why don't you go and ask the last person I gave this? That's happening quite often. So I think there's a need of a project related with information and linking all this primary information gathering in order to avoid duplications. We need a sponsor, perhaps, and the participations of probably many institutions. And not far from this is this other request of spreading the message, spreading what the Renewable report brings to all of the people of small villages. I think the tool is possible to read for any audience. It is online, so perhaps there's no much additional effort needed to be done in order to read specifically what is useful for each of the final consumers of energy, and then the renewable alternative.
Thank you very much all. We see that the challenges are daunting in some cases, but we are on the right track because I think all the institutions are really willing to cooperate, and we will continue putting together our expertise and goodwill so that we can come up with reliable data. Because without reliable data, the best energy strategies are like a giant with clay feet, and we will collapse. We have to keep on together. We have to gather these energies that REN21 has put together today. And we want to thank you all for keeping to contribute to this data collection, giving us your tips on how you go about it. And I want to thank you, the panelists, very warmly for being here and having been so candid about what they can do and or cannot do. Thank you very much to all. We needed another half hour.